Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andreas Ehrlund, and I am the Senior Security Architect at Sectra, or at least I was. I'm a product manager now, but I do these lectures as for our customers and expos and things like that. The topic today is cybersecurity in healthcare, and I hope you're going to find it interesting. It's something that I've done for a couple of years now, and for our customers in hospitals and in healthcare organizations around the world, cybersecurity is really becoming top of mind, and it's usually a very good lecture for them to get some insights. And also, usually, when this is a real lecture in a real big room with an audience, I tend to answer questions from worried customers. If you have any questions for me, I understand there's going to be a questions and answers session, and please use that or catch me afterwards if you have any questions that are not suitable for a public forum. The topics for today are the threat landscape, machine learning and smart appliances, our customers, cloud solutions and security, ransomware, very hot topic as usual. Security in RFPs doesn't sound very sexy, but I'm going to try to make it. What Sectra does in this area. So let's jump right into the threats. I'm going to start by showing you a little movie. Hopefully this is playing on your screens right now. This is a guy somewhere in Central Europe on a street corner with an ATM machine. He's probably much too warmly dressed for the season, and he's doing something with the ATM machine, taking out some cash, or what did he do? Fiddling with his phone. So what could this be? He seems to be waiting for something, still pretty sure about what's going to happen. Waiting for 15 seconds. Oh, there's a huge wad of cash coming from the machine. Puts it in the bag and keeps filling the bag with money from the machine. Now, what does this have to do with healthcare? Not much at all, actually. But in the same way that these people rob banks in Europe, and this was actually a cybercrime organization called the Cabernet League, and they got off with some 5 billion euros in cash by infiltrating bank systems and then making away with cash from money mules like this guy. And what they have in common with the threats that healthcare is facing is that these people are not in a rush. They get in through some forgotten system that maybe deals with the ventilation system in the bank, or something else that's peripheral that really doesn't get any love. And then they try to escalate and escalate and escalate until they finally have control over the system that controls the ATM machines. And so these people this is their job. They're not in a rush. They're here to make money. Now, Europol and Interpol caught these guys, or I assume, I don't know if they actually caught the top level of the crime organization. Usually those people get away. But let's see what these people or these organizations are interested in when it comes to healthcare. It's really all over the news lately. That healthcare has a huge cybersecurity problem and so on, and it's been in the news that it's possible to fake illnesses such as cancer in images, which then makes it so that the doctors give the wrong diagnosis. And it's really for the healthcare industry has escalated. When the media found out that the healthcare industry was lagging behind when it comes to cybersecurity, it became a bit of a race to find the juiciest vulnerability and the most exposed patient records and so on. And of course, it's about people's private patient data. Of course, you and I would feel it wouldn't feel very good if our private patient records were somehow put up on the internet or whatever. But as we will see, exposing your personal private data is not really the end goal in all this. As the media's attention on this subject escalates, we also get a counter reaction with the people that are governing the cybersecurity regulations for healthcare. So new standards are popping up, and the industry is trying to get a grasp on the situation and really improve things. So what are the motivations? Well, it is of course cybercrime. I mean, that is the big, money is always the big factor here. It's not about your personal data and looking at your private X-ray images. That's not it. It's money and extortion. There are also some factors of hacktivism and information operations, and cyber espionage and nation-state actors are a thing. So let's dive into that, shall we? A couple of years ago, in Norway, they found an intruder in the healthcare network systems, and this turned out to be a state actor, and the Norwegian security really had a big problem getting them out. And what I've learned from working in healthcare and in healthcare IT is that the Norwegians are really some of the best at cybersecurity. They have a lot of funding and they have a lot of know-how, and that combination makes it so that the Norwegians know their stuff when it comes to cybersecurity. So if the Norwegians found this intruder lurking in their healthcare networks, who hasn't found them? I mean, there are a lot of hospital systems in Europe and in the United States that really do not have that kind of funding and know-how. So I think there's a rather big unknown factor, and there wasn't. It's probably good to say that there wasn't any damage done or anything like that. These people were there scouting, and if a nation state is scouting a network, they're probably doing it to gain some kind of advantage or knowledge about how this system could potentially be used in an escalated situation. So for healthcare, we have a common problem. We have this huge push for digitalization where we really need to make patient records more available, systems more interconnected, but at the same time, we need to protect that data because it's regulated by law. That we really have to make sure that the data is safe, and if there is a breach, in most countries, you are obligated by law to report that breach and to report the incident and to state how much data was actually lost. So at the same time, criminals realize that there is value in this data. There's a wealth of data, and that these systems that handle our healthcare are a matter of life and death. So if you had a capability to shut down such a system, there would be value in that downtime. So you could, for example, conduct some extortion and ask for money to get the systems back up. During the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been some news. I'm not expecting you to actually be able to read what it says in this slide. There has been some news about the People's Republic of China trying to get into research organizations that are researching vaccines for COVID-19. And the Swedish Defense Agency, the Swedish Defense Research Agency, FY, did a report also on what has happened under the guise of Corona, what has escalated within cybercrime. And really, I don't see this as anything new at all. The FY report says that phishing attacks has increased with emails using Corona as a way to become more believable. But really, what is it? It's nothing new. It's just phishing attacks. It's very, very commonplace, and it's the most successful attack vector everywhere. That China allegedly are trying to get into research organizations, to me, it doesn't feel like anything new at all either. They're not there to sabotage, and this is, of course, I don't have facts on that, so that's my speculation. As usual, these superpowers or nation states are trying to get an advantage. They're trying to get to the information. There are some instances where these types of attacks have been used to harm operations, like, for example, the nuclear program in Iran that was sabotaged by the United States. But it's very unusual. Mostly it's about getting to that juicy information. So what is that information worth then? Well, I used to have a slide here where I talked about how patient records used to have, like 5 years ago, a price of a couple of $100 per patient record, and how that price then has plummeted over time to the fact that patients' records were sold for $1 each on the seedy sides of the internet. I actually had to take that slide out because there's so much patient data on the dark web to purchase that the price per record is no longer relevant. You're now purchasing healthcare databases for under $2,000 for the entire database from an entire hospital. So this is the development we have, where patient data is becoming worthless. And of course, it's worthwhile to protect our patient data. We should be, as a society, used to protecting our data. But at the same time, if you think that your data is not available for sale somewhere, you may be kidding yourself, because there is so much data out there. One example I also found in my research for this is an operation called the Dark Overlord, where they advertised not just databases, but they actually advertised the sale of the domain administrator's access. So that is one way of doing it. If you're a hacker, you get into a system, you realize that, hey, this is a pretty large hospital operation. But maybe you're not that interested in getting the heat for ransomwaring a huge hospital in the United States, for example. You just sell the access credentials and let someone else do it, who's actually used to running ransomware operations. So it's when you start looking at it as an open market with businesses operating within that market, then it starts to make sense, really. We can look at more examples here where how many records were sold and the Bitcoin prices for those records. In this presentation, there's a lot of data like that, and I have references for it. So if you're interested after this, you can have a look at the links and the references. It's really an eye-opener to look at stuff like this data from the US Department of Health and Human Services, their Office of Civil Rights, where you have to report if you've had a breach. You have to report what type of incident it was, if it was hacking or unauthorized access or whatever, and how many patient records or individuals were affected. So this is really interesting, where for one of the rows here in my presentation, I have 1.15 million individuals affected in a hacking IT incident. And a lot of this is actually just accidentally losing stuff. That's worth pointing out. A lot of this is someone left a portable hard drive on a train that happened to contain a healthcare database. So that would be a cybersecurity incident with like a lot of individuals affected. But it's still under the regulation, you have to report it. Just a couple of days ago, Verizon released their data breaches and security report for 2020. And this kind of confirms the same thing I've been saying as well, that in their healthcare section, this is really an excellent report, by the way, even kind of funny to read. They're kind of humorous in their wordings. They say that financially motivated criminal groups continue to target this industry with ransomware attacks. Fine, we knew that. Lost and stolen assets also remain a problem in our incident data set, and basic human error is alive and well in this vertical. So that is a problem. We have an industry of professionals that are working very hard, often under a lot of pressure, with maybe sometimes less than average IT knowledge. And that combination of working under pressure and dealing with life and death while you don't have the access to the most IT knowledge that's really a strong factor for what's happening. This report also states that 48% were internal threat actors. That should not be read as 48% of incidents are like internal people, disgruntled admins or whatever, trying to harm the organization. It is just that factor of people accidentally losing stuff. And an interesting note that they had is that web applications is really on the rise for cybersecurity attacks within healthcare. That's a natural development. At Sectra, we develop more and more applications that are intended to be web-facing. Of course, we put a lot of work into the security of those applications, but some vendors don't, or some buyers can't afford to buy quality software. So they expose healthcare systems on the internet, and then there's a way in. This development will surely continue. In this day and age, now it's becoming very, very common that radiologists need to do their reporting from home because of the pandemic. They need access to healthcare systems on the internet. Not everyone can deploy a VPN at large scale in very short time, which is now the situation we're facing. So what can we do to alleviate the cybersecurity situation in healthcare? A lot of people are looking for solutions, and when people look for solutions, they love seeing silver bullet solutions that's just going to fix it all in one big stroke. So I'm going to talk a little bit about AI and machine learning in cybersecurity. This is the silver bullet that a lot of people are looking for, and there is some merit to it. If you see a normal state in a system, and then suddenly you have an attacker in that system, then it feels pretty natural that a machine learning system or an AI system could actually detect the abnormality of someone being in your system doing something that's out of the ordinary. But think about this. A hospital network is usually not very segmented, and there's an immense amount of data rushing through that network at any point in time. Being able to positively detect an attack is very difficult, and it cannot be solved today just by using automation. You need to have someone looking at those logs to determine, is this warning really an incident? Is this warning really an incident? Is this a false positive? Also just for training such systems. So I really want to warn people about believing too much in the hype. This slide shows a guy called Dr. Abed, who's an acquaintance of mine who's a cybersecurity expert who is an advisor for the European Parliament and for the UK government. And he's also associated with the University of Cambridge, where they have an AI lab, a rather large AI lab. And he told me that right now, what they're using that lab for when he visited was not to look at the efficiency of these cybersecurity intrusion detection systems with AI capabilities, but rather just to show how easy it was to fool them. And this was about 6 months ago when I talked to him, so I don't know if the state has changed, but know this, that for some applications, like the one I have on the slide now, not gonna say their name, but you can read it. There's a lot of venture capital. These companies have 90% marketing budget, 10% research and development, and that is a sign. So when I talk to my customers, I really advise them to consider that if you want to buy something that's an intrusion detection system powered by AI or machine learning, please consider that there's a hype going on. There are diminishing returns in how much use you will get out of this. You need to really know your threats, where are your threats coming from, and you need to know your organization's staff and capabilities. You can't just buy this machine, put it in your basement, and expect it to do all the work for you. You really have to meet up with manpower to look at the logs and the output and to tend to the system. But if you have the spare manpower and money, and not a lot of healthcare organizations do have spare money and manpower, then it would be a really interesting experiment. But maybe an experiment we could leave for the academics for now. So which customers do we have then? What about Sectra's customer? What do we do? I'm a huge statistics nerd, and usually at this point in the lecture I would go and point to the screen behind me and talk about these stats, but you don't have to look at the details of this chart at all. This is just showing that when it comes to cybersecurity, one of the most important things is staying up to date, right? Everyone knows that. Patch your systems, update your things. That's true for us as well. So we like to keep tabs on our customers and see how fast they're taking new upgrades, how fast they're upgrading their operating systems and so on. And if we see that someone is falling behind, then we contact them. So we have monitoring for our customer systems. Usually those monitoring systems were built for being able to give advanced warnings. For example, your hard drives are running full. We phone the customer up and say, make sure that you have hard drive space or this system will stop. Nowadays we can use those systems to give even more detailed advice that could be security related as well. So it's really appreciated by our customers to have not only their own IT staff, but someone else phoning them and helping them out. And we really do meet a lot of different customers. On this slide, right now we see a very neatly stacked server rack with neatly arranged cables. And we do face a lot of customers that know their stuff and that have their stuff under control. It's very well handled and well organized, well funded. But we also do meet the other people. And usually from my audience, I get kind of a ooh and an ah or a laugh when I show this picture that's on the screen right now. It's a huge tangled mess of wires, and this is actually the stuff that we face as well. Some healthcare organizations do not have the IT funding, and they are really struggling. They are treading water, and it's not because they're bad people. They don't do this because they're bad people. They do this because they're underfunded. They're really trying to make things work. A hospital consists of hundreds of different systems that need to be integrated and updated and patched, and it's a huge endeavor. So if someone slips behind with their patching or their cybersecurity work, that's totally understandable. And in this slide, I really like to stress that when you look at security, cybersecurity, a lot of times you tend to focus on the security of a certain system, or is your operating system patched, and have you penetration tested your application stack? Yes, that's very important, of course, but the outer layer, as this slide shows, is operational security. And really this is where we see the failures. You can secure your stuff, you can have a castle with a fancy drawbridge and a moat and huge walls, but someone's gonna just trip up and fail and leave the door open on the back side. Someone's gonna be sloppy with their password or fall for a phishing attack or something else. That's what happens. That's what gets you 9 times out of 10. Solutions for that then. When speaking about these things, I really try to be constructive and not just... In cybersecurity, some people are just fear mongers. They travel around the world and talk about how bad everything is, and then they don't talk about solutions. It's very easy, I think, to be blinded for the fact that we have made a lot of progress. The healthcare industry may be lagging behind when it comes to cybersecurity, but if you just look back like 5 years ago, this was not the topic it is today. And a lot of positive changes have been made. So, do you know this man, the guy who's on the slide right now? Probably some of you do. This is Eric Schmidt. He was the opening speaker at HIMSS 2018. HIMSS is a huge healthcare IT expo in the States, where we attend as well. And he was on stage and he had this quote that really touched me. Of course, Mr. Schmidt is the ex-CEO of Google. I mean, he's kind of biased, right? But he said, don't walk to the cloud, run to the cloud. And yes, he recognized on that stage as well that he is biased, but he really made the point that if you think that your stuff is more secure in your own basement than it is in the cloud, you're wildly delusional. This is, when it comes to getting to someone, bribing an admin or just having someone walk right in through social engineering, that's easy. But getting to a real certified cloud operators stuff, that is an order of magnitude more difficult. So even if you don't trust all cloud operators, maybe I don't trust Amazon, then that's fine. But find who you trust and work together with those people. That's the most important takeaway here. And there's an interesting development because, and if you get back to our dear neighbors to the west, the Norwegians, they recently changed their wording from the government from may use cloud solutions when purchasing new healthcare systems to shall. And that's a pretty huge change. It's a small word, but may to shall, it's really, it has become really a shift in not just the Norwegian government, but in many governments. The UK is also changing their strategy within the NHS to become what they call internet first. So this is going to be a paradigm shift, and the companies like Sectra who sell software to healthcare organizations, we have to keep up. We have to be able to deliver software in cloud environments securely. That's going to be really huge. And the reasons are, as they state, big data and AI, but that's only one half of it. The other half is security. And cost as well, when you really scale up. Cost is something I could talk a lot more about, but I don't think we will, because we will run out of time. So I will speed through the pros and cons. And let's get into ransomware, shall we? Ransomware is a topic that we deal with regularly at Sectra. We help customers who are under ransomware attack. And it's difficult because it's not always doable for us to just jump in and help a customer when they're under a ransomware attack, because if we attach to them remotely, we would be under risk as well. There are solutions for that, of course, but we try to help out as much as we can and provide expertise and advice. Some interesting stats here. On the costs on being attacked by ransomware if you're a hospital, on average, there are 9.6 days of downtime for the IT systems affected. And that's up from 7.3 average. If I ran a hospital, 9.6 days of IT downtime would scare the shit out of me. I would be so scared as the CIO of such an organization. 96% get a working decrypting tool. Now that's very interesting because these organizations, as we said, they're criminals, but they're very business-minded, right? They want to help you out decrypting the files. There's an 80% data loss for those who pay. So that may be a problem with the decryption or damage that were caused when the ransomware encrypted the files and machines inevitably rebooted. But 8% data loss can be pretty huge depending on where, if that's across the board or what it is. 96% get a working decrypting tool. And I've even heard stories of ransomware organizations ransomwaring a hospital, them paying up in Bitcoin, because, mind you, some of these even have Bitcoin accounts standing by in case something happened. So they pay up. Then 2 weeks later, they're ransomwared again by the same organization. But this time they are offered a discount. So discounts on your ransomware attacks is an actual thing because they are running a business. The ransomware organizations that are really good have excellent customer service. You can really get in touch with someone regarding how to resolve the situation as fast as possible, and they will reply on the phone and they will be super helpful. That's where we're at with ransomware attacks. So how did it get in? Well, it's remote desktop. 59% of all ransomware attacks is remote desktop being exposed somewhere, either unpatched and vulnerable, so it's easy to get in, or they just brute force it or find credentials or something. But remote desktop is really the go-to way for ransomware attacks. And phishing is another big way of getting credentials to being able to get access. There are some cases of insiders and so on, but it's not as common as one would think. The trends is that we see much smarter ransomware deployment. When I said earlier that if you have the credentials when you hacked in, you kind of want to sell it to someone else who's more capable of ransomwaring, right? So that's one trend, where instead of just going in and applying ransomware to the first machine that you find, you wait, you scout the place out, you distribute your payloads on a lot of machines, and then boom, you set it off at once to cause as much damage as possible. So they hit larger targets because getting more money is a thing, and they were trying to hit them harder. Insurance, as I said, one thing is that they keep Bitcoin reserves for being able to pay up as fast as possible. There's also in the States insurance companies offering cybersecurity insurance. So they would get money to recoup the loss of paying the ransom in that way. I just feel a really bad feeling in my stomach when I hear the term, because what if someone got hold of the list of which hospitals have signed huge cybersecurity insurance? Wouldn't that make like the excellent shopping list for attacking those targets? It's troubling, for sure. So, solutions. How do we stop it? Well, there are no silver bullets. It's just the highest return on investment is still, and has been for the last couple of years, awareness training. That's where you get really, where you lift your users from zero to, maybe not hero, but from zero to somewhere, being able to sense that something is wrong. Having backups and having those backups protected, and also, of course, practicing restoring from backups so you know that they actually work. Then you wouldn't have to pay the ransom, at least, if something happens. Having well-funded internal IT means you could cache things early and limit the damage. I don't think well-funded internal IT is going to stop ransomware attacks. It's just gonna alleviate the situation when it happens. But healthcare has a cost problem. Healthcare has the problem of an increasing and aging population, which increases their cost mass over time. So yeah, funding their IT is always going to be a struggle. But working on disaster recovery and working under the principle that we will get hacked, we will be compromised. When you have that mindset, I think you've won a lot. So start there. Now, when it comes to healthcare IT, that I work a lot in, I want to talk briefly about security and request for proposals. So request for proposals, for those of you who don't know, this is the purchasing, one part of the purchasing process where you want to shop for new healthcare IT systems. And they try to know which vendor is the best one to buy from, right? So they ask us a lot of questions regarding the systems that they're buying, but they also ask questions on cybersecurity. And as you see in this graph on the screen right now, a couple of years ago we had maybe like 5 or 10 cybersecurity questions, and then suddenly that jumped up to like 20 to 50 cybersecurity related questions for one tender. And now it can easily be between up to 200 security related questions for just one customer. And this is a problem for us because our line of business is like selling to many customers, right? So every time we try to take a new deal and sell to a hospital or a healthcare organization, we have to answer these questions. And I don't really mind answering questions, but it's come to the point where when you read the questions, I would be unsure that the customer actually even knows what the question means. And if I was a cynical man, and I totally am, by the way, I would say that there are consultancy firms making a lot of money from just selling question packages to these customers and say, here's 200 questions. Ask these questions to your vendor and you will be secure. And that's really harmful to both the buyers and the sellers. We as sellers are going to have to work hard to answer those questions that sometimes kind of doesn't make really sense to us. And the customers probably doesn't even understand what the answers mean. So, and they have to take care of it and follow up as well. So here's a shameless plug. I wrote a short white paper that's called Security and Requests for Proposals in Healthcare IT. And it's really just 2 pages saying, don't ask people 200 questions on every little detail. Here's 7 questions that's really gonna hit people in the ribs and really gonna give you the most bang for the buck. Try to distinguish how to read the answers to distinguish a vendor who knows security from a vendor who doesn't know security. That's available also as a link. We'll make sure that that's available to everyone if you're interested. I don't expect a lot of people to be, but the people who are interested are very interested. So, what's Sectra's strategy? Oh, sorry. I'm gonna jump in and talk a bit about. I think I'm gonna jump because there's a lot of stuff in here that's mostly for healthcare professionals, and I expect you guys to not be. One trend that's really strong that I want to mention is consolidation. And this is not just healthcare systems buying other healthcare systems and healthcare regions in, for example, in Europe, merging to become larger healthcare regions. But it's also about the software. And I have this quote from a customer of ours a CIO from one of our customers, a large healthcare chain in the US. And she visited Linköping and she said that we're not looking for best in breed, we're looking for best in suite. We had best in breed and we ended up with 11 different PACS systems. And for those of you who don't understand that, I can just say that when you have a hospital and you're a CIO of that hospital, you have to deal with, say, 100 different vendors providing systems to you. And you have to certify the security of every one of those vendors. It has to be a total nightmare. So even if the cardiologist or the radiologist or any discipline of medicine wants to have the absolutely best software for their specific domain, the CIO is going to have a lot more say in changing that to make sure that there are fewer vendors that are good at a lot of things, but maybe not as pointy and as sharp as some of the expert systems are. But that's just common sense. I wouldn't want to handle 100 different vendors. I would want like 10 or 20 vendors that I could at least know who they are and make sure that they develop secure software and that they can deploy secure software and so on. So that's a really strong trend. Consolidation is going to be a thing. We're going to see larger healthcare regions, larger healthcare operations. To close this up, I'd like to give some a trend lookout on the years ahead. And these are the points that I really like to give to my customers. More hospitals will be hacked. That's not really like some kind of genius guess on trends from me, but it's worth pointing out that this is not going away. This is the new normal. And I think and I hope that healthcare IT vendors that have poor product security will lose sales. That is a trend we're seeing right now, but it's not the only factor. So it's too early to tell if that is actually a really deciding factor in these people losing sales. More customers will move to cloud services. That is for sure, and it's a trend we're seeing in Sweden. It's a trend we're seeing in Europe. It's a trend we're seeing in the States. And I think it's a positive trend for the most part. Security assessments and other security-related services will be huge. If you're a consultant in the cybersecurity business, you would probably agree with me. There's a lot of people who need help to just even know where to begin. So it's going to be a very lucrative business and already is. I think log monitoring will be really huge, because if it is impossible to monitor a very, very noisy network with thousands of gigabytes of files just running amok in the network, looking at logs from individual machines and aggregating those logs is really something that we believe in at Sectra, and it's a strong security trend that's a realistic tool that you could use. And of course you could apply AI and machine learning to that when you have it up and running. But I wouldn't start with that. I would just start with basic log monitoring, because I think it's excellent, an excellent tool. Lastly, one trend that I hope we don't see is integrity attacks. And I asked the question here if we are ready. I don't think we are. An integrity attack, for those of you who don't know, is where you have an attacker who goes into the system unnoticed and doesn't ransomware anyone, doesn't shut down systems, but instead maybe changes the blood groups of half of the patients, maybe switches images between patients, maybe introduces cancer tumors in images of patients who didn't have cancer. This is, of course, on a nation-state level. This is someone who's trying to discredit the government and the healthcare system of a country. They would do something like that to make sure that the citizens of that country feel that their state cannot be trusted, because they fail on this monumental level where a lot of people actually just die because of faulty data. So it is a theoretic thing. It's something that's being discussed in academic circles and cybersecurity circles, but let's hope we don't get there, because it would be quite awful. Our strategy, just quickly, key points, is that support secure integrations. Integrating is the future, digitalization is the future, so we need to be able to do that securely. Support disaster recovery, because things will happen. It's just a matter of how you get up when you get punched in the face. Staying up to date and then leveraging our sister company Sectra Communications that are really skilled in cybersecurity. Being in a company that has both cybersecurity and healthcare IT is really, as two branches of the company, is really a huge benefit for us. And we try to make good use of that. This is a slide that I'm really proud of. This is a tweet, and I'm not going to make you read it because you're probably looking at this in a really tiny screen next to me, or maybe it's hard to read. But this is a tweet from a hospital manager in the UK, who said that he's proud to say that Sectra is the most cyber-focused, and cyber means cybersecurity, supplier with a can-do attitude. And this is, when you get feedback like this, when they use their personal Twitter accounts to laud you in public in these discussions, I think that's really warming, and that is what motivates me to keep doing what I do. And if you're interested in working in this area, I would highly recommend you talking to us. It's good to have this customer interaction. Right now, of course, we don't see our customers a lot, but at least we keep in touch remotely with them. And I just love it. It makes the effort worthwhile when people say that we are really recognized for doing our best. And to close this for real, I'd like to end with three bullet points that are really key when it comes to cybersecurity. I want you to ask questions because, and not just from me, from anyone. If you're unsure about security on a personal level, like, should I use a password manager? How do I do that? To ask questions. There's no shaming not knowing, and protecting yourself is actually very easy. The hardest part is asking someone for help, right? So ask for help. That is my second advice. Really do ask for help, because not everyone can be interested in this subject, but the people who are often very willing to help. And that is my final bullet point here. If you are someone who is in the know, if you know about cybersecurity, then please do reach out and help others. I think it's really important. It's a duty that we have who work in cybersecurity to help out those who maybe are too busy to worry about cybersecurity. Maybe they're doctors helping patients right now in these times, and or whatever. So please, if you have knowledge, help others. And that's all from me. I will be available to answer questions on this session when this is aired. So please do take that opportunity to ask me questions. Thank you.